So we're finally to sumo related questions here.
Okay.
What is your view of Taka Keisho's henka against Hokuto Fuji in the last tournament?
Yeah, it's pretty soft. I mean, I'm not a fan of henka, but it's not illegal. I think it's allowable for guys that are in the ranks that it doesn't really affect the outcome of the tournament. It may sometimes, and it probably has on occasions. But if a Magashit of 15 pulls a henka on an Ozeki, that's not going to worry me. But if an Ozeki pulls a henka dying days of a tournament, they say they just reacted naturally. Well, I don't think so. I mean, sometimes maybe, but yeah, just not a fan. I'm not a fan of top rankers doing henka. I mean, who was it? Hakuho when he beat Asashoryu for a Yusho.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
was that a full henka? Pretty much. It was definitely a shift and hit as opposed to a hit and shift. So henkas are, I think, they can be subjective in terms of how you look at them. I mean, Haruma Fuji was known for the Haruma Fuji half henka,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where he would take the shoulder but quickly get the left hand or right hand outside grip and win by a watanage. But they probably weren't actually full henkas. A henka is just getting out of the way to make sure your opponent loses. And yeah, Taka Keisho was right up there with that one. Not a fan.
In a basho earlier this year, this is a longer one, you kept commenting on how the wrestlers were now extending a hand to help other people onto the dohyo, and that it wasn't really done before, that the younger wrestlers seem to have started the trend. So what are the rules around rikishi behavior or code of conduct on and off the dohyo, and how did they develop?
Well, you know what damayoshi is, and that is basically the slamming of a guy at the edge off the dohyo when he's obviously already out. And Hakuho's been probably one of the biggest users of that in recent times. There is no rule. There is no guiding light about what they're supposed to do. In actual fact, earlier on, and you'll still see it from some of the guys who are what you would call traditionalists in sumo, they won't take the hand. They'll say, "No, no, no, I'm fine."
Yeah.
They'll wipe it away. So in the hair, when they're doing keiko, there's none of that. You wouldn't help someone up in keiko.
Oh,
You
really?
once you're down, you get up yourself. I mean, you go to a full keiko session to watch the young guys, or maybe it doesn't have to necessarily be a young one, but if a senior in a hair believes that one of his deshi, even if he's an ozeki or a sekiwake, needs a going over, they will give him the full treatment until he's kicked and slapped and come and they'll kick him in the ribs and say, "Come on, get up, get up, get up," and they just keep going and going and going. That's brutal practice sessions, and they'll do that with an up and comer that they think's got potential to do well. It's it's the I don't know, call it soft love, but it's the kind of sumo that you will see a lot if you go to practice sessions, which I don't do anymore. I did that for the first, I don't know, 12 years, and um, it was a learning experience, but you learned how things are different inside the hair as opposed to being on the dohyo during a tournament.
Yeah, how so?
Well, the damayoshi is pretty much a constant in practice. The hard treatment, it's brutal. These guys, they're exhausted afterwards, and when they're exhausted, they give them more. So to see a young guy for 20 minutes just getting slammed and smacked and kicked and whacked, and then he gets up covered in dirt and has to go again until they're totally exhausted, and they basically look at the clock and say, "Well, that's about enough." Yeah, so you can go there for 3 hours, and you could get good long sessions of 20 minutes of one-on-one with an up and comer that they believe needs a bit of treatment.
The fan appreciation event that we just had, it seemed to be attended by a lot of young fans. A lot of ladies were there. Is the JSA still worried about sumo losing popularity?
No, not at all. They're trying to do things, they've introduced this Sumo Prime Time with
Yeah.
Hiro Morita, the I think that's the name of the show, not that you would know, but
Hmm.
I'm being facetious because that's all they do is tell you the name of the show. But the idea being that some of the younger Oyakata who are directors believe that they need to do their own thing, because normally advertising agencies are responsible for the promotion of the sport. And some of the big
Oh.
ones right now are going through major issues with the Olympics because of bribes and all sorts of things that were handed out to agencies, or agencies who paid representatives on the board of this Japan Olympic Committee,
Oh.
um, doing favors to sell merchandise and to sell clients to get them as the major sponsors of the Japan Olympics. So that is a big issue with companies like Dentsu and Kadokawa. And so Dentsu was probably the major player with the Sumo Association, and they still use them, I think, on certain programs. But now that you have people like Kisano Sato, the former Kisano Sato, and
Hmm.
Hakuho, the two Oyakata with bold ideas and ideas about taking sumo to younger people, they were heavily involved with Kimuriyama, former Kimuriyama, in the promotion of that Fan Appreciation Day, the Fan Festival.
Mm.
Huge success, and more successful than the previous ones they had. I forget what the last one was. So this one was full on, and still not quite what they want to be, even though I think quite a few of the rules were broken about contact with young kids and what have you. Taka Keisho, probably one of the biggest offenders, but it was quite touching, and the fans got to do things that I think many people from overseas would like to do.
Well, I can tell you that all of the efforts that are being taken to reach English speaking sumo fans are widely appreciated. And one of the biggest questions we got over and over again was, how far might these efforts go? Could there be a tour to North America in the future, or how much more programming could there be? Or even, could some ex Rikishi come on who are fairly good at their English come on and talk in some of the programs? Like, how much growth potential is there?
Yeah, I'll answer the question is that there aren't many rickshaws whose English is good, so that's a major issue. NHK has the rights for the broadcast, and Obama TV has their own package with the Sumo Association. There was a rumor going around that they were going to expand it through Obama TV. I found that to be false.
Hmm.
I was actually approached to leave NHK and go and join an organization to do the full 15 days at every venue.
Huh.
But I that was kiboshed. That was knocked on the head, because there's no way they could do it. They couldn't afford to do it. It's just
Hmm.
out of their reach. Have to pay me a fortune. No. The idea being that they would have English coverage with someone on the spot.
Yeah.
Now that's not going to happen. Now the other thing, uh, NHK World
Hmm.
expanded to 4 days of sumo, I think, live for 50 minutes or whatever it is, an hour and a half the last day. I don't believe that will go beyond that. Now that's
Mm.
because of the programming divisions within NHK World: business, finance, uh, general news. They have their own programs that they want put on the air during that 2-hour period that the sumo's on. So at the moment, and I've been told it won't happen. That's unofficial. But I can tell you on the positive side, without giving you any information because I'm not allowed to, is that there will be a sumo tour coming up overseas.
Fantastic.
That'll be next year,
Okay, that's
but I'm
huge.
but I'm not going to tell you where.
Okay, don't tell me
I
where.
I, I can I can tell you it's not the US.
Oh, that's painful. Oh, that hurts twice as much.
That only leaves like about 160 other countries.
Oh, you just had to get me excited for that and then tell me, no, not the US.
No, I believe so. I believe it will not be the US.
Okay. Well then let's move on a little bit to some other types of questions here because I only have you for a few more minutes.
That's
Uh
okay. Time's all right today.
oh, thank you. Do stables use additional experts the way other pro sports teams do, such as nutritionists, kinesiologists, PT experts?
Some have, and some still do. Now, let's see, how many years ago? 7 years ago, there were nutritionists used at certain hair because they believed that just having chanko nabe was not necessarily a good idea. There have been studies done by American university professors who've come here and done various studies on BMI for a sumo stable. Sports psychology is an area that is also being used by some rikishi, but that is their private and own choice. As you know, Hakuho had his team of professionals in terms of his conditioning,
Hmm.
is basically doctors. Um, and he had 3 on his team. There have been other rikishi. Koto Shogiku used a sports psychologist. I asked Kisano Sato whether he used one when he went through his Cupid doll period, sitting by the dojo with his strange little face, but he said no, that was all his own doing. But some of them, Akebono in his time had an outsider that he used to spar with, who,
Huh.
in from what I know, and this is unofficial, ended up not being a good idea because he probably wasn't the right person to be doing the job. But yeah, a lot of them go out of the way, and of course they use gyms. They go to gyms as soon as they finish
Yeah.
keiko. They'll
Yeah.
go and do a lot of hay are very much into the weights, doing weight training,
Yes.
and a lot of them have their own gyms within the hair, the bigger ones. But uh, it's hair by hair. It's not a sumo kyokai undertaking to tell them what to do because they're all separate entities within an organization.
Okay. And is there a limit to how much change to traditional sumo training and Heia life that an Oyakata can do within their own stable?
Oh, that's totally up to them.
Okay.
There's no such thing as say you have to do this, but they all know it's the basics that you start with, and then they develop beyond there. I think the irony is Koto Oshu. Pardon me, Koto Shoho. Oh, well, let's get his right name first. Koto Oshu, with his changing with Naruto changing his training style to be more influenced by Western uh, training methods, and of course his hay has gone downhill since. So they might be having a relook
Okay.
at what happens there because everyone keeps getting injured. His idea
Mm,
was that to introduce these to stop any injuries in the hair, and then they've had this run of injuries, which whether it's coincidental, I don't know. But he whether he and I haven't heard any word that he's going to do a rethink, but one would suggest maybe he needs to.
gyoji training. Surely they
Mm.
have some. Do you know what it is?
No, they basically are told what they need to do, and they go away and train on their own. They may make contact with a senior gyoji, because there are normally, not always, but there are normally more than one in each stable. Most have 2 at different levels. It could be a Sanyaku Gyoji and a Jonakuchi Gyoji. So he will impart some information to him. The announcing of the Rikishi, the tone that they use, that is all their own. They just watch others and go away and practice on their own. There is no Gyoji coach. There is no, head of the Gyoji department who gets everyone together and says, well, you need to do this and need to do that. The Oyakata will give them some advice if he thinks he's getting it wrong in training, but
Okay.
invariably they train on their own. They can't, they will train when there's no one in the hair, or when they're, the guy's having a sleep in the afternoon, or whatever it may be. So no, there is no official coach. no official training method. That's why vocally some of them have such different styles.
Hmm.
And some of them sound pretty terrible, but some of them sound really great. It's just they are what they are.
And what else are they doing in the heya?
Managerial jobs,
Mm,
quite
okay.
often they're associated with ordering of food, taking phone calls for the Oyakata, acting as the office manager, office managers, all sorts of roles are different. The gopher, I need this, jump on your bike and go and get this. Depending on the age of the person, of course. But
Right, of course.
the more senior they get, the less bike riding they do. The idea being that there's always something to do.
Okay. Okay, a lot of questions around sumo school.
Hmm.
And of course you did, I believe it was you that did the voicing of a Sumopedia episode about sumo school, but more questions like, could he tell us more? I've heard that there's a sex ed component to it. Does anyone ever fail sumo school? And what are they wearing when they're going to sumo school? What are those outfits that they wear? Things like that.
Well, okay, what they're wearing, I'll answer that first. They wear yukata, whatever they would wear outside. They basically turn up straight from the heya. There is a designated room inside the kokugikan. They are, especially the ones that come from overseas, there's that designated period of 3 to 6 months where they have to learn cultural history of sumo. They have to learn technique. They have to learn, and there's a history element as well and of course language being the main one for them. It is a school. It's a sit-down class like you would see in any other school, except the seats need to be a bit bigger, I think. But the most of the kids or young people that first join sumo have to go through that training period, so that when they step up on the dojo, they have some knowledge. Because in the past, some of the, especially the ones that came from overseas, they didn't have this mandatory period of learning language or trying to learn the language before they started, because they didn't understand what was going on. They were even being to be told by the gyoji to move left or right or go back behind the shikiri's hand, or they didn't understand. So that was introduced. The raw elements um, of sumo are taught in these classes. There are other elements to that question were
Yeah, is it a pass and fail? Does anyone ever fail?
no. It's
Okay.
it's maybe you should do something else if and quite often they'll leave before that decision is made for them.
Okay.
They
Okay.
don't, I mean, they don't. It's more about the practice sessions, getting beaten up and not realizing what they got themselves into. So, you'll see Jonakuchi guys or not last very long, and the departures. Normally it's not unusual. That's why we have so few young boys in sumo now, as we compare to when we had the 900 number.
Yeah.
When we're now closer to 600. So,
Yeah. Okay, we've got about 3.5 minutes left here. So let me just jump to the last one.
mm,
The Bonzuke is going to come out right before this interview goes on our podcast.
right.
So, what wrestler in the top division is particularly exciting or interesting to you right now?
Well, interesting and exciting and potential are probably all different things.
Mm-hmm.
Tobizaru, I think, is very good for sumo because of his uniqueness. The fact that he is not what you regard as a traditional sekitori. He shows his emotion, win or lose. He gets really pumped. He's not traditional in his sumo either per se. He's probably getting a little more orthodox, but he's probably the most exciting one. How far he goes, I don't think it will be very far. I think Sanyaku will be his limit,
Mm.
and probably quite likely to be there this tournament, I would think. Um, yeah, he'll probably just creep into Komusubi, maybe. And of course, you've already got the results, but I'm guessing. Wakataka Kage, I think, is probably the one with the most potential. The only negative he has is his size. Now, the fact that he started so poorly in the previous tournament with 3 losses, and then he won 11 out of the next 12 bouts or whatever it was. Yeah. Hang on, there's only 12. Yeah, he won 11 of 12, right? So And to finish 11-4 with 3 losses to start with at that rank, I think was exceptional. So he's got the grit, and he's got the physique. He just the musculature, and he's got the technique. He just hasn't got the size.
Mhm.
So if he makes it to Ozeki, and I think he probably will, is that he might struggle to, like they all do, to maintain that rank. I can't see him putting up constant big double digits. He might be a 10 guy and occasionally get a 12. I think he'll win one more youth show in the not too distant future. It might even be the one coming up. I
That'd
would
be
suggest
exciting.
he and Taka Keisho are the most likelies, with the story about the Ozeki. Taka Keisho obviously is better than the other two. Well, the other one now. And whether he's going to be one for much longer is also quite doubtful that he maintains his rank. He's training very well, and his intense training has been displayed this time, but it's all mental with him. It's not physical. So we need another Ozeki. The Yokozuna will not compete.
Mhm.
He'll be sidelined, and if that changes between now and when the Bansuke comes out officially after this broadcast, after this airing, it makes me look pretty stupid. But I don't think he'll compete, and I don't think he should. He
Yeah.
has kind of got the grace of some of the Oyakata to say, well, you need to take time off, and I think that will give him another full year that he could probably compete and try to get to his 10 wins. So, getting back to answering your question in a roundabout way, the most exciting for me is Tobizaru. Wakataga Kage is potentially the next Ozeki.
Thank you very much for giving us some of your time at Sumo Kaboom.